face it and listen. For every pound you lose, it's going to help your knee out.
Literally just having a conversation on a prior podcast about people talking about like fat phobia. And when individuals like there's a stereotype when people have when they look at like a Mexican person or a black person. There's a knee-jerk stereotype that you see through media. And there's also a knee-jerk stereotype that people have when they look at individuals who are overweight or obese. They might think they're lazy, that they're not hardworking, that they don't care about themselves. And all those things aren't true. But I'm wondering for you, you mentioned that it was like, what you would do is it's like before people could hit you with something, you would be able to take control of the situation. How long did that go on? And when did you feel like you switched out of that? Or do you still feel that you have a little bit of that in you?
It's a great question. I think to a certain point, there's always that people pleasing that need to sort of control the energy of a room. Yeah, I mean, I think at 35, I'm married with a kid. I've been doing this for a fair amount of time to where like, just naturally, I don't know whether it's that I think more of myself or that my level of caring about what other people think has sort of lessened. I think it's probably somewhere in the middle for the both of those things. But inevitably, I think like, here's the thing with overweight people, and this is just my experience, of course. I think people have a primordial response to seeing someone who's bigger. Like they literally think like, oh, like this person is going to slow down the pack. Oh. Or you have like people who literally, like I would see as a kid, something trigger in people's eyes when they would see me and I go, they're going to make a comment about my weight. And I don't know if subconsciously they almost felt like maybe I need to shame him so that he'll do something about it. And it wasn't born out of malice. It just was like, they were so emotionally unequipped.
What was like the most hurtful part of that? Was it maybe the fact that they might insinuate stuff about your entire family because you're so young and you're heavy at such a young age?
It just was easy. It was hacky. It was like, first of all, I grew up, I didn't know my dad. And so like a lot of like men in my life would be like, oh, I'll be your father figure. I'd be like, I bet you will. Like, well, let's start with allowance and go from there. Like, I'm like, it sounds good. These like platitudes, like it sounds fun that you want to project on me, like, oh, how healthy I should be. But like, you're not going to put the work in. Like, it's going to be, you're a passing ship in my life. So I just remember at a young age thinking how outrageous it was that people felt comfortable commenting on it. Because now, in a good way, I think, people would never feel comfortable doing that with someone they didn't really know. I think we're in a better place. So yeah, I just remember growing up and thinking like, how is this an okay conversation?
Mm-hmm. Do you think that like the, cause we were just talking about this yesterday, the day before about like, like being fat phobic and, the body acceptance and stuff. But do you think like all that stuff is like an overcorrection? And instead of, I mean, obviously, yeah, I don't think it's good to like shame anybody, but now it's like, Nsima brought up the topic of like doctor chairs having handles is now fat phobic. And it's like, did we go a little bit too far now?
And I want to add a little bit of context to that, because there was an interview with this therapist. I wish I could remember her name, but do you know who Dr. Mike on YouTube is?
I don't.
Okay. He's this doctor who has millions of followers, and he puts out some really good fitness information. But there was some information he was putting forward, which this therapist, who she herself is overweight, she was saying that it was somewhat fat phobic. And when I was doing some digging, I was trying to truly understand what is fat phobia, or what do people look at that? What is that, right? And she was mentioning certain things like, for example, the chairs in the doctor's offices. I've never thought about this before, but when an individual that's overweight or obese goes to a doctor's office and there are handles and chairs and they cannot fit, that is something that quite literally is a hindrance for them to even want to go to the doctor, because they might not be able to fit in the chairs that are there, right? And she was mentioning these other things that might be in society that are fat phobic, but she was also mentioning how like the whole of the doctor's industry, because typically if somebody goes in to try to get help that's overweight, the doctor will generally just say, lose some weight, right? Rather than maybe addressing a lot of other issues that may be the reason why they're overweight, like things going on in their personal life, things going on at home, which could be the bigger issue than just go lose weight. So the fat acceptance side of things, and it's like we have to be very careful when we talk about it, because everyone should love who they are and even love your body at the time. But there should be, if you are not feeling confident or feeling unhealthy, there should be a push to change that if you're looking to. You know what I mean? So with the fat acceptance thing, it seems that it's gone very far to say like, hey, this is actually okay and it's somewhat healthy, when maybe it might not be healthy for that individual. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I think in every case, and body image and whatnot is a great example, there's always an overcorrection, right? The pendulum swings far to the other side, but inevitably it seems to find its middle ground over time. And, data would suggest that, yeah, having a bit of a lower body mass allows you to avoid some comorbidities, some things that are brought on with obesity or high amounts of sugar and high amounts of things in your diet. There's just enough scientific data to support that you're going to be in a better place if you're able to to work on that. And so, yeah, I agree. I think I certainly think there's a balance. My buddy, a good buddy of mine, he's in his early 50s, pretty heavy guy, certainly he's got an extra 60, 70 pounds on him. And his knee gave out finally. He's a pretty active guy, but his right knee went out. And so I sent him to my orthopedist, who I love, because I tore my pec bench pressing. Josh Peck tore his pec.
Oh, shit.
and he fixed me up good. So I said, go see this guy. He's great. And my buddy's basically expecting to go in to get shamed, right? That the doc's going to look at him and say, you did this to yourself, and now your knee went out, and we're going to have to put on a new knee, and you're going to have to completely uproot your life. And inevitably, this doctor, because he's savvy and understands not only the science portion, but the bedside portion and being a human being, which isn't always connected in the sciences, right? Usually you're really good at one and maybe not as great at the other. Mm-hmm. He said, listen, you tore your meniscus. You're 52. A lot of guys are walking around with tears in their knee that they're not even, if they're aware of, it's like, it's not completely hindering their life. He's like, you're not that into sports, so we can probably get away with not fixing it as of now. If it's not going to truly hurt you, we can do a lot of PT. We can work around it. If you're apprehensive about getting put out for a surgery in your mid 50s. And he said, and listen, for every pound you lose, it's going to help your knee out. And it was like, I'm going to acknowledge the reality that, yeah, if you were leaner, you wouldn't have these knee problems, but I'm not going to shame you. We're on the same page, because my buddy knew. He was walking in, getting ready to be shamed. And he was like, I just remember getting a call from him, feeling such a relief. And by the way, still motivated to go do something about it, but not like I'm a bad guy because I'm carrying some extra weight.
Yeah. Pat Project family, how's it going? We talk about sleep all the time on this podcast. That's why we partnered with 8 Sleep mattresses. Now, this mattress is the Tesla of sleep. It's the Tesla of beds. Its technology tracks your heart rate variability. It changes its own temperature based off the way you sleep so that you get better sleep every single night. It is quite literally insane. Check them out. Andrew, how do they get it?
Yes, and before I do that, I wanted to let you guys know that you can actually set the bed to wake you up silently. I know that sounds weird, but actually the bed starts vibrating around your head, and it doesn't wake up the entire household the way my phone used to do back in the day. So now I just kind of have the bed wake me up silently, and it's amazing. You guys got to head over to 8sleep.com/power project. That's EIGHT sleep.com/power project. When you guys go there, you'll see a banner across the top saying that you're going to receive $150 off automatically. So again, that's 8sleep.com/power project to receive $150 off your Pod Pro cover or your Pod Pro cover and mattress combo. Links to them down in the description, as well as the podcast show notes. Let's get back to the podcast.
I find your situation to be unique. A lot of times people are like, I'm going to lose weight and I'm going to make a new person, kind of. I'm going to, divorce my former self. But with you being on TV, did you have concern over, like, if I lose this weight, I won't be the same person that I got casted as? Or is that something that you were like, I need to just go all in on this and forget about acting and just see where I end up mentally and physically?
I think people tend to marry themselves to you for the first image that they fall in love with. So for me, it was like as the big funny guy. And also I was part of a legacy, right? So when I was heavy and getting into acting, people would be like, oh, you'll be like Chris Farley or John Candy. Now, obviously those guys are geniuses. I would be lucky to have a tenth of what they had, but they weren't comparing my talent. They were merely comparing my girth. Like, wrap yourself up in this package because this tends to work. And I'm sure if you're a pretty girl or a handsome guy, like a leading man type, like everyone, or maybe you're like, you're a Michael Cera, like everyman sort of type. And then everyone wants to put you in a box. And if you want to change at all, you're going to have a bit of an uphill battle. So what I knew was that my competition was small, that if as an overweight guy, there were 3 or 4 guys who were in my sort of, forgive me, no pun intended, weight class that were like going out for the same roles, and that I probably had a good chance of booking something. And that if I got down to like a lower weight, I was going to be going against Jake Gyllenhaal. I mean, not really, but there's like 1,000 guys that look like me.
You could smoke that guy.
Yeah. It was going to get competitive.
How did you lose the weight, and maybe what are some things you were attempting to do when you were young? I'm sure you've been addressing this your whole life, that things that maybe didn't work for you, and then ultimately what worked for you.
Well, I talk about in my book about, I think I was like the first 10-year-old who was on keto, but back then we didn't call it keto, we called it Atkins.
Right.
And poor Dr. Atkins, man, he really got a bad rap. Meanwhile, he was like early keto. But so I would try and fail, man. Because I was really heavy.
So Pat Project family, I hope you enjoyed this clip. We are on Discord and Reddit. We're trying to talk to you guys and build a community down there. So the links are in the bio. But remember, like, comment, subscribe, share this out with people so you can share the wealth of health. As cheesy as that fucking sounds. Peace.